control the world. So maybe we can get it in. I'll take it here. Okay. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Ezoi hui kitana shetrichin lamoin. What is a ketana that needs miun? In other words, at a certain age, even the kedusha ketana is not effective, and it doesn't even need miun. Zok the Mishnah. Kol shesiu ima v'acheh l'daita. If she was a willing participant, then the Nisuin, the Rabbanon, the Kedushin, the Rabbanon works. What about if it's a Siyu Shaloi L'Daita? What if it was against the will? Then Ein Tzricha L'Moin, then even the Kedushin, the Rabbanon isn't Chal, and it doesn't even require Mian. Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus Eimer, Kol Tenoikis, She'enu Yechayla Lishmor Kidusheha, if she's not old enough to appreciate that she's connected to a man and that she can't go anywhere else, Ein Tzricha L'Moin, that's also a girl whose kedushin wouldn't work at all. The Maisa Ktana has no validity. Rather, she blibes like a mafuta. It's as if there was any relations, she would be considered mafuta, not married. Therefore, Bas Yisrael L'Koyin L'Sheichal B'Truva. If she was a Bas Yisrael whose brothers married her off to a koyin, she wouldn't be able to eat truma al kinyan kasplay. Or Bas Koyin Yisrael, if she was a Bas Koyin and they married her off to Yisrael, the marriage will not take away her schus to eat truma. Once again, toichal b'truma. Belezvan Yaakov Aimer, which is not understandable, we'll wait till we see in the Gemara what it means. Kolikva shimana ish kilo hu ishtoi, kolikva she'enim ina ish ki'ilu eina ishtoi. If what's holding her back is from the man, then she's treated like his wife, otherwise not. Amar Yehuda b'Amri Lava Masnisa Tana. B'Rishayna haYakoysin get miyun. They used to write a star if a woman did miyun in order for her to be able to verify that she was not connected to a man, that she was a pnuya. She would have to show a star that in fact she made miyun. And there was a longer Megillah, the nusach that they wrote. They wrote Lo Ra'ina Bey, I don't want him. V'Lo Chavina Bey, I don't want him. The less Ano boy Lisnas V'Lo, I don't want to be married to him. Kivan the Chazu, the Nafesh Dibur. Once the Rabbanim saw that too long of a nusach, they thought it would get confused with a real get. Amri, they said, going on to Daf Kuf Chesam and Aleph, Osu Lechlufe Begita. People would confuse it with a real get. And what does that mean? Rashi says, Sheyichtevenu Soifer Bur Beget Gerishin Legarish Ba'isa. Legarish Ba'isha. A Soifer who was a Bur, who was an Amoritz, would think that nusach is an appropriate nusach to write for the nusach of a get. And Chas v'Sholom, they might use this as a get, and they would be thinking that they're being matter ish, but she's not. Okay, so therefore, Tekinu, they decided to simplify dramatically what's written in the Shtar Mian so that no one would ever dream that nusach would be good for a get. And this is what it says: Tekinu hachi b'yoyim ploini, on this day, miyana ploinis bas ploini ban pana, in front of us. Very simple. Clearly not a nusach that would be confused with the nusach of a get. Tanu Rabbanan. Zeu miyun. What is miyun? What defines miyun? So in its simplest form, it's amraf, she says, efshi b'ploni baili. I don't want ploni, my husband, or efshi b'kidushin shekitshuni imi ba'achi. Or I don't accept, I don't want the marriage that my mother or my brothers accepted for me. However, we're going to learn that there's other implied miyunim that aren't explicitly spoken out. For instance, yes, okay, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, even if she's sitting in some fancy carriage and they're taking her from her father's house to her husband's house, she said, I don't want my husband. But if you think about it, in the act of going to be married to him, so her actions, which normally speak louder than words, are showing that she's going to be taken in by her husband. Zeu miyun, that's also considered a miyun. And Rashi explains, she's literally walking down the chuppah. But v'amar efshi boy, the equal member, you might be able to say, ilay boyle will teichos v'sezel. If she doesn't want, let her not go into the chuppah. Why? So her actions are strongly contradicting what she's saying. Because I guess it's very uncomfortable under the chuppah for the kala to back out. So you would think. So therefore you still accept that she's backing out, even though her actions are interrupting or are contradicting what she's saying. Okay. I forgot to name of the sefer from Zilberstein, who writes on all the Masechtas. He writes in the Cheshuv Chemed, brings down a very interesting case. I don't know how this is possible, but Akala was standing under the chuppah with her chosin, and she realized then that he was wearing a prosthesis. He was missing a leg. I guess in the bashos it never came out, and she whispers to her father under the chuppah, I don't think I want this. And the question was, maybe not to be mavazah the chosin, you should go through with the chuppah, and then right after get a get. But I'm not sure what he paskin, but he references this Gemara. Zok Gemara weiter. Yes, even a greater chiddush. Zok Rabbi Yehuda. Afilu hayu orchin mesubim bebeis paila. Even if they had guests there. So Rashi speaks out. What's the significance of that? Thank you very much. What's the significance of that? The leka bezdin. There's just 3 individuals that aren't members of a bezdin that are home in her house. And she's serving them. Her husband had guests, and she was serving them drinks. And she told them, I don't want my husband. That's also mean. And Rashi explains, why would you say it's not a good mean? Because there's leka bezdin. Visu tahani mishtik shaski v'loikamoidi. They're not acknowledging that. They're not acknowledging that there's a miyun over here. So it's still considered a miyun. And I believe one of the other Rishonim speak out. Or you could also say that the reason why she's doing it is because she's not happy. I mean, Rashi says this in the next case. She's not happy that her husband's making her badin these people. So maybe she's just saying it out of frustration. Nevertheless, it's considered a miyun. Yes, okay, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, which the Bach changes. Rabbi Yehuda, afilu shigra baila etel chenveni lahavi lechefetz mishalei. Even if her husband sent her on an errand, and she tells the chenveni who has nothing to do with this, this is a good miyun. And once again, Rashi says, Ezel Chavani, so the Chiddush is, first of all, it's the Leka El Chavani. You don't have 3 people, you only have the Chavani there, and he's not a dayan. And she's frustrated, and that's why she says it. Don't forget, she's a Ketana. How many times do your children say, I don't want to live in this house anymore, right? And then 10 minutes later, they're fine. So she's a little kid, and she's frustrated. Nevertheless, that's considered a miyun. In other words, as we learned yesterday, he better be nice to her, because on a whim, she could be mavatal this marriage, and he better make sure to treat her fields properly and make sure that they're being serviced properly and they're not being degraded. So he says, any tanoikus she'ena yochel lishmar kedusha eina tricha l'mayim. So zok to Gemara, Amar b'dam Shmuel halacha k'Rabbi ben Antigus. In fact, that's the case. If she's not mature enough to watch her kedushin, she doesn't even need miyun. It's not even considered a miyun. Okay, zok to Gemara. Tana we learned ketana shaloi miyana, a ketana who did not make miyun. The Venices. But what she did do is she got up and she got married to somebody else. So that's a very, very big show that she's rejecting her first husband. That's what I would call an implied miyun. So Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseir Amru Nisi Eha Hein Miyuneha. The mere fact that she's getting married to somebody else with a nisuin shows clearly that she's not interested in her first husband. So now, without even words, here her actions speak much louder than words. What about Niskachimau? What if she only accepted kedushin from another man, but she didn't do the suin? There's a huge difference, right? She didn't have a beer from him. What if she made kedushin? She only did kedushin. Would that also be considered as a miyun? Tashma, ketana shaloi miyana, a ketana who did not make miyun, v'amda v'niskacha, and she got up and she accepted kedushin from another man. Zok to Gemara, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Amru. They said over in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Kiddusha hein miyuneha. Her kedushin is her miyun as well. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira clearly said that even being mekabel kedushin from another man is an expression of miyun. Ibaylahu, Pligi Rabban aled Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira oila. Do the Rabbanan argue on Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira? Maybe they say that kedushin or nisuin does not constitute a miyun. And imtim salamer pligi. And even if you want to suggest that the Rabbanan do argue on Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, do they argue only by kedushin and say that kedushin doesn't imply a miyun, or yafilu b'nisuin, or even if she accepts nisuin from somebody, even that does not imply a miyun. Imtim salamer pligi afilu b'nisuin. And if you want to say that the Rabbanan argue even by Nisuin, halacha k'moisai, or ain't halacha k'moisai. V'himdim shalom halacha k'moisai, and even if you want to say that halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira connected to Rabbanan, do you say it's been Nisuin only because that's a much stronger expression of rejection of her first husband? Oh yeah, filu b'kedushin. So this Gemara reminds me: is there not a Gemara in Bava Kama that has there's a machlokes? It's on an Amud Beis. It's on an Amud Beis, and there's a machlokes over there, and the Gemara wants to know, is he arguing in this case or in that case? And even if he's arguing on this case, the Rabbanan argue with him, they argue on both cases, or only on one case. There's Allah like them in both cases or one case. Remember what that shiloh was about? Baba Kaber, Baba Messiah? I think it was an Elam Matzias. In Elam Matzias, what was the case? That's what the shiloh is? It's in that case? Right. So it's in that case? I remember it was an Elam Matzias somewhere. I remember we were learning that by Escholos Kamar, we learned it. Okay, let's see the Gemara back there. Tashma. Amar Bidam Arab. Amar Bidam Shmuel. I'm not. It could be that was the case. It was right around there. So, but it's not number base. So let's see what the Gemara says over here. So we have a whole bunch of shilas. We want to know: is this halacha that kedushin and nesuin implies a miyun? Is that under dispute? And who do we pass it on? So Tashma Amar Bidam Shmuel halacha Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Halacha that Yehuda ben Beseira. And we say halacha meklal pligi. The fact that we have to paskin like a Yehuda ben Beseira, obviously there's a bar plukta. If there's no bar plukta, you don't have to paskin like it. And Rashi tells us that it also implies that the halacha is like a Yehuda ben Beseira in both sides. Side by nesuin, but even a kedushin would be considered a miyun. Correct the Gemara, but there's one more shiloh that we didn't bring up, and that is as follows: what was this woman's situation before the miyun? Of course, according to Beis Hill, that you could do miyun even if you're a nesua. Was she a nesua, or maybe she was only Mekudeshes? Now, maybe all of these things are considered a miyun if she takes kedushin from somebody else, or if she takes nesuin from somebody else. Maybe that's only a good miyun if her first marriage was only kedushin. But if her first marriage was nesuin, maybe then her marriage wouldn't be good. Maybe the miyun wouldn't work. So tomorrow for that we have a raya as well. Tashma, the Chaltei the Avdon, the daughter-in-law of Avdon. Do we remember a couple of days ago, Avdon, one of his oinshim for attacking Rabbi Shmuel, but Rabbi Yosy was that his daughters-in-law made miyun. But that was one of the things. So maybe this is the story. The Chaltei the Avdon, Imrud, the daughters-in-law of Avdon rebelled against their husbands. Shadar Rebbe Zuki Rabbanon Lemivdikin. Rebbe sent a pair of Rabbanon to check them out to see if it's considered a miyun or not. Amri lahu, they told these girls, Nashi, women, Chazi Gavraichu Dekaasi, look at your husbands that are coming. Amru lahu, they answered back to the shluchim of Rebbe, Nahava Gavraichu Dekhu, let them be your husbands. So that was clarity. Amar Rebbe, Ein Lach Miyun Gadol Mizeh. So here, this must be the story. Here is where there was a miyun from Abdon's daughters-in-law to him, but not to him, to his husband, his boys. Zok Gemara, what was the case there? My love, to have a nesiva. Maybe, let's assume that these women were nasui to Abdon's boys. And then you have a raya that this type of implied miyun even works if their first marriage was a nesuin. Zok Gemara loy, to have a mikdasha kedushi. But halach is, v'halach kebidu b'mseira, v'afilu b'nisuin dekama. The halach that kebidu b'mseira, that even an implied miyun, like she's accepting kedushin or nisuin from another man, even that is a miyun, even keneged a nisuin. Okay, gewaltig. Rabbi Elazar so Rabbi Elazar said that the ma'isa of a ketana has no value whatsoever. Zog to Gemara, Amar Rabbi Shmuel, Chayzrani al kol tzaddi chachamim. I analyzed all the different opinions of the chachamim. I didn't find anybody whose piskei halacha in this Indian are more consistent than Rabbi Elazar. Why? Rabbi Elazar even said that even if she's walking and spending time with her husband in the garden, means she even had bia with him. And then imagine she's a bas kohen, and her kedushin, the rabbanon, was to a Yisrael. So even if she's married to Yisrael and she has bia from a Yisrael, meaning she's a nesua to Yisrael, so if she had bia, she can't eat truma, she's tamei, but she can get up from the bia, she can go toivel, and then go eat from the truma of her father's household that evening. So that's like as consistent as can be, is that her marriage is nothing. She's too young of a child. Her marriage is not a marriage. And in fact, she can eat truma even the evening after she was novellas by this husband. They're only playing house. Tanya, Rabbi Elazar Eimer, ein ma'aseh ketana klum, and therefore, what other halachas is that relevant to? The ein baila zakoi loy b'mitziyasav v'loy b'ma'aseh. Her husband does not have a schus, not in her mitziyah, not in her ma'aseh daim, v'loy b'afaris nedareh, which are all normally rights that a husband has on a wife. Vein yarsha, he will not yarshin her. Vein mitamala, kalala shel davar. The rule is eina ke'ishtoi l'chal davar. She is not considered his wife at all. Ella shetzricha miyun, but we still require miyun, which is a little bit not consistent, right? Which is what I'm going to point out. Abishu Aimer, Baila, he has a din of her husband. There's a koy b'vin siyasa, ub'ma'is yedeh, uva forest nedereh, v'yarsha, u'metamala. Klala shel davar, the default is harei ke'ishto l'chol davar. Ella sheyotze b'miyun. He's like his wife, but she can go out with me. So Amar Rabbi said, Nirin divi Rabbi Eliezer, v'div Rabbi Yeshua. I like Rabbi Eliezer's position better than Rabbi Yeshua. So Rabbi Eliezer hishva midosav b'ktan. Because Rabbi Eliezer is very consistent. She's not his wife. Rabbi Yeshua chalak. Yet Rabbi Yeshua takes positions that are somewhat contradictory. Exactly in what way did Rabbi Yeshua take somewhat contradictory positions? He is he, because if this woman is his wife, tiboy get, she should need a get, miyun should not work. Zok to Gemara, if that's the case, Rabbi Eliezer nami. According to Rabbi Eliezer, it's also not so perfectly consistent, because he lavish he, if she's not considered his wife, miyun nami lo tiboy. Then why do you need miyun at all? Ella bichti teipuk. She should just go out without anything at all. She shouldn't even need miyun if it's not considered ishtay. So the Gemara says that we cannot be fully consistent. It's mamish not ishtay because Rabbi Elazar is still saying that she would need a meal. Okay, let's see Rashi. Rabbi Yeshua Omer Zakoy b'Mitziyasa. Why? The Rabbanon Afkaru Gabei Hefker Bes No Yehefker. At the end of the day, she's not Midaraisa married. She's a Ketana. But it works with Hefker, Bez, and Hefker that the Rabbanan still give her Metzias to him. Umatamalo, which Umatamalo means in Koyin who, if he's a Koyin, he'll be Matama for her.
If she goes out, then she gets back to them.
Yeah, that's me, right? Even though her marriage is only with Rabbanan, keeping the Yerisla, Havela Kames Mitzvah. So this is very important. With Hefker, Bez, and Hefker, I understand they can give him her Metzias. They can give her money. But how could they allow him to be Matama to a girl who's only married to Midrabana? Midaraisa, he's not allowed to be Matama to her. Midaraisa, this is not his wife. So Rashi reminds us of a Gemara we had earlier. Any person, even if it's a sibling, if they don't yashin her, they'll ignore her body. They won't even bother burying her. So therefore, since we've given to this man with Hefker, Bez, and Hefker, Chazal gave him her a chosim, he yashins her. Her own siblings won't even bury her anymore. Therefore, she's considered a meis mitzvah, and that's why a kohen is allowed to be metama for her. It was a bigger expense, yeah. Yeah. To bury her? Yeah, burials were very expensive in those days. The Gemara even says there was a time where people couldn't afford to just drop off their bodies and leave and abandon them. So the Gemara tells us if someone doesn't yashin her, they say, I don't yashin you, you're on your own. So it's the Gemara back to Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Aimer. So Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov made a cryptic comment, and he said, any ikov, kol ikva shimon ish kilu ishtoi, kol ikva she'enim ish kilu ein ishtoi. So the Gemara is going to offer two pshatim to this cryptic comment. Heichidami ikva shehiman ish, the ikva she'enim ish. What is this ikva min ish that Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov refers to, and the ikva she'enim ish? Amar b'dam Shmuel, I'm going to explain. Tavuli nasi. We have this woman who's married midrabanan. She's a ktana. She's married midrabanan to Reuven. And Shimon tells her, I want to marry you. The Amra, and she says, Shimon, I'd love to marry you, but machmas ploini baili. I can't marry you. I'm married to Reuven. Zui ikva shehimina ish. That's called an ikva shehimina ish. And what is the halacha? It is an ikva mina ish. The Lord Yaakov says, ki ilahu ishta. So that is considered his wife. Clearly, that's not a mian. She's considered his wife. But if she says, machmas b'nei adam she'enim uganimli, if she tells Shimon, I don't want to marry you because I don't think it's a good shidduch, that means obviously she's ignoring the fact that she's married to Reuben. In other words, she doesn't even consider herself married to Reuben. Zui ikva she'enim ish. So we're looking at her. If her attitude is that I can't remarry because I'm connected, so she's old enough that there's a marriage over here. She acknowledges that there's a marriage over here. But if she's saying I can't get married because I don't like you, well, clearly she doesn't even consider her marriage to Reuben as a factor at all, and that's a girl who's too young to get married. So and therefore she's considered married. That's the first shot. Abai bar Avin, Reb Chanina bar Avin, the Amri Tavayu, they say differently. They say the words of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov be something totally different. And this is what it means. Nasan laget, if he gave her a get, if the husband of this Kitana gave her a get, Zui ikva shumanish. That's considered a breakup that's initiated by the husband. It's a get. Therefore, we midrabanan consider this woman to be a grusha, and we consider him like he was once married to her, and therefore, he cannot marry her mother and her sister and all the other relations of a wife that he wouldn't be able to marry. And she'll be also to marry his brother and his father and all the other isurim that come along with that. And it will pass her kahuna because it's called a reach again, even though technically she's not married with a raisa, but it's a reach again. But if the ikva was not mina ish, rather she was the one who initiated the breakup of the marriage through mian, zui ikva she'eina min ish. That's a ikva that's not from the ish, and therefore in such a case, so the two pshatim in the first pshat is it's a litmus test How do you know whether she's old enough that her marriage is b'chlal a marriage? Depending on her attitude. In the second shot, it has nothing to do with the litmus test. It's telling you Allah Alamaisa. If she's released through Miyah, we look at it like there was never a marriage, and if she's released through a get, we look at it like there was a marriage. Correct the Gemara, how could you say that this is what Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov means? Hakatani l'kaman, in merely a few lines, the Mishnah is going to say this exact halacha, and it's going to say hamama'enis be'ish, who muter b'krei v'seh, v'muteres b'krei v'av, v'lepaslam nakuna, but nasan laget, who also b'krei v'seh, v'yasur b'krei v'av, v'lepaslam nakuna. So how could you say Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov means that in the last words of the Mishnah we just learned, if we're about to learn the first words of the next Mishnah, which says exactly that? So Gemara, obviously, Rabbi Eliezer's words are cryptic. So it's logical to say that the Mishnah would then elaborate and explain those words. And you would learn that the first words of the next Mishnah is not saying a new halacha, but just explaining and elaborating upon what Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said.
The problem with that is that it should have been attached to the previous Mishnah.
It is. Our Gemara doesn't break up the Mishnayos according to the way the Mishnahs are written. It breaks it up according to how the Gemara sees it. So obviously from the Gemara, you see it's looking like the first shot. I hear what you're saying. If a woman is mamayin, we look at it like the marriage wasn't there. Who muter b'krei v'seh, will he muteres b'krei v'av. And therefore, because she's not a megureshes. Nasan laget, then who also b'krei v'seh, v'yasur b'krei v'av, v'paslam nakuna. And of course, this is Amud Rabbanan. Now, what happens in a more complicated case? Nasan laget, he gave her a get, and then v'echsira, and then he took her back. And then Mia Navoy, she said, you think only you could throw me out? I could throw you out. And she was mamayin on him after they got back together. Okay? And then V'nisis La'acher, this is a whole soap opera in one little case of Mia. So again, she was married, she got divorced, she came back to her husband, then she did Mia, and then she went and married somebody else. V'nis Amalo Oynis Garsha. And the second husband, either she got divorced from him or he died. Muteres lach shaloi. She can go back to him. Why? Because we don't consider her a grusha. We consider her someone who was mamayin. Because if we consider her a grusha, it's machshav grusha, which is the first husband. Even though he divorced her, but since he took her back afterwards, and then she made mion, we don't look at it this like a machshav grusha, which we look at it like he took back a woman who was mamayin.
Even though she married somebody else.
I'm sorry?
Even though she married somebody else.
Correct. But we don't, so let's see Rashi. What if he never took her back after the get? And it was V'nisis La'acher, Mitoich HaGerishin, after the get, then V'nis Aramalo, then Asur L'Rishon, because that's called Machshav Rishas Mishanisis, Afilu Hachi Ki Echzira, since he took her back, Umiyan Avoy, and the second round broke up through a Miyun, Osi Miyun, the Miyun comes, the Goli Allah Diktanahi, the fact that she was released from her first marriage, ultimately at the end, through Miyun, it shows that she's a Kana, Ubatlua Lagita, it's Mabatal Laget. Now, of course, these are all the Rabbanon. It's all how the Rabbanon perceive this woman. Since Miyun was done last, we don't perceive her as a Grusha, we perceive her as a Mema'enes, and therefore, we'll have a Bechazor Shnia, Kamachs Grusha, Mishanish Lacher. We don't consider the Machs Grusha, because she was never a Grusha. So, talk to more about it. How about the different case? Miyun boy, first she made Miyun, Vechsira, and then he got her back. And then Nasan Laget. So the final send-off was through a get. And then V'nisis La'acher V'nisaram L'Niskarsha, then it's a Surah Lachshua. Why? Because then we perceive it as if she was Mugareshes from him, and therefore she comes under the rules of Machshir Grushasa. Zok to the more weiter. Zekla. This is the rule. Get Acher Miyun, Asura Lachshaloi. If the get came after the Miyun, meaning her final send-off was through a get, we consider her a Migureshes, and then all the rules of Machshir Grushasa apply. Miyun Acher get Muteres Lachshaloi. Hamama'enes Be'ish. What happens if she does Miyun on Ruvain? Or we'll say she did Miyun on A, V'nisis La'acher, and then she married B, the Girsha, and then B divorced her. La'acher, she got married to C, Umiyan boy, and she made Miyun on C. La'achar, she got married to D, the Girsha, and D divorced her. Zakla. So how do you look at who can she go back to from these sequence of men? Kol sheyoytze himenu beget. Any man who released her with a get, asura lachsar loy, she will not be able to go back to that husband because we consider that machshir v'shas and mishnizos. But b'miyun, any of these men who released her or she released herself, the marriage broke up through miyun, muteris lachsar loy, she'll be able to go back to that. Zok the Gemara, Almo, you see from here that asu miyun umavatal get. You clearly see that the miyun will be umavatal get. Why? Because in the earlier case, when we were dealing with one husband, it said that if he gave her a get and took her back, and then the marriage broke up at a later date through miyun, then there won't be a problem machshir v'shas, like we discussed on Nominal. So you clearly see the later miyun is mevatel the impact of the get, and we say that she's not a migureshes or a mini, but we have a problem because the seifa of our very mission that we just learned seems to contradict that, and it says "Hama'enis beish v'nisis la'acher v'girsha la'acher umina boy la'acher v'girsha zaklal." What does the Mishnah say? Kol sheyatzah himenu beget asura lachshaloi b'miyun muteris lachshaloi. Alma loy asu miyun dechavrei uvatal gita didei. We don't say that since from the man that she married after she got divorced, that man had a miyun. Why do we say that the fact she had miyun to the second one is mevatel the previous get, and we say she's not considered negureshes? You see, you don't say that. So we seem to have contradictory mashmoyasin between the ratio and the seifa. So right away, I'll say that there's a very big difference if it's his miyun or if it's somebody else's miyun, right? Because we will look at it as this relationship and it's through gerushin. It's a different relationship that ended through miyun.
Like a kana or not a kana?
I hear. So you're saying look at tzvar, and the Gemara holds with that tzvar because the Gemara is asking the kasha, but the Gemara is going to probe into it a little bit. But I'll call upon them. You see, Amaloya see miyun dechavrei uvatal gita today. The miyun of a later husband won't change our approach, our attitude to what the earlier husband had given up with a get. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Mashmuel, since we have stiridik and mashmoisin from the ratio of our Mishnah to the sefer of our Mishnah, our only option is to say Tabra. We have to break the Mishnah in half and say Misha Shanazu, La Shanazu. In fact, our Mishnah, even though it doesn't mention names, is expressing the view of two different Tanaim. In the ratio, it expresses the view that a miyun will eliminate a prior get, and in the sefer it says a miyun will not eliminate a prior get. Omar Rabba, I believe the Bach changed the base to Rabba. No, Omar Rabba. So the Bach changed it to Rabba. Omar Rabba. Okay, no, Rabba. He says could be it's Rabba. Omar Rabba. My kush, I don't understand what the problem is. The Dilma miyun day, mevatel get day. If he makes a miyun after he gives a get, then we ignore the previous get. But miyun dechavrei, maybe miyun of his chaver loy mevatel gita today. Maybe you won't be mevatel the get. And Chaim C wants to know umayshna. What's the difference? Zok the Gemara, I'll tell you the difference. Miyun dechavrei the loy mevatel gita today. You know why the Rabbanon wouldn't allow the miyun of his friend to mevatel his get? I'll tell you why. For safety reasons. Because what if he gives her a get and now he wants her back, right? So he's going to have an interest in breaking up the marriage of the second husband. Since they've lived together, right? If they've lived together, then they already have a sprach with each other. We all know with our wives, we can communicate things without even speaking. Because once you live together for a while, there's that synergy. So therefore, we're afraid, Azul Mishabish Umaisila. We're afraid if he wants her back, he'll already manipulate her to do miyun on the second husband. Therefore, the Rabbanan said that once you had a get, you're done. You cannot have her back. So even if she left him through miyun, loy levatal gita today, it shouldn't be mevatel a get that he gave prior, because once again, the idea the makarisbury moshe v'krisoisav azul l'mashabesh u'ma'isila. Once again, if he wants her back, he's going to try to ruin the marriage of the next husband. Zok Gemara, in such a case, when her final departure from him was through get, yes, you could say he'll try to get her back. You know why? Because if he got rid of her through a get, she didn't want to leave. Get means he instigated that. He threw her out. So there, she has an interest in coming back. So he could manipulate it to come back. But if the way he left her If the way she left him at that was through mean, it means she walked. Obviously, he was begging her to stay, and she said, "I'm out of here." So therefore, you can bet your bottom dollar he already tried very hard to get her to stay before she did the miyun, and she didn't want to stay. Such a woman, we're not worried that he'll be able to manipulate her later when she's happily married to her second husband. After she got rid of the scoundrel, we're not worried that he'll be able to manipulate her to come back. Ella.
You know what I'm saying? You can flip it around. You can say
What?
You can say when he gives her a get, he's obviously not interested in getting her back. But when she gives
Right, but he can change his mind. The point is now you can change your mind.
true, but you can say it like this. When you give her a get, he's not interested. When it's meal and he's interested, you can just flip the whole thing around.
I hear. So that means that the Gemara must know the psychology well of how people work. And the Gemara knows.
I find it beautiful that the idea of we're worried about this guy ruining somebody else's marriage.
I hear.
We don't want you to ever be able to have that influence.
Yep. Ella, kasha. If you do have a kasha, the chavrei ad chavrei kasha. We have a stira, even if your chavers mion could mess up your chavers get. Why? Because it says mion avoy. If she made mion, v'chzira, and then she came back, and then nasan al get, and then he gave her a get. So her final departure from him was through a get. Then it's a surah lachshalot. Right? That's what the ratio of our Mishnah said. Taima in this armor is garsha. Why are we saying that she can't come back to him? That's only if the second marriage broke up through a get or through a death. Hamiyana. The Mishnah doesn't say what if the second marriage broke up through a miyun. It's mashma miyana muteris lachshalot. It's mashma that if she made mean even from the second husband. So even though from A she got a get, but if there was miyun from B, she could still go back to her first husband. Alma asu miyun de chavrei umabatal get today. You see that the fact that she did miyun on the second husband allows her to go back to her first husband. Or many, but the problem is we have a raya fakir because it says hamima enes bish. If a woman does miyun on A, benisis la'acher, and then she married B, vigirsha, and B gave her a get. Li'acher, then she married C, umiyan aboy, and she made miyun. Zaklal, what did our Mishnah say? Kol shiyatzami menu beget. If she was released from a certain individual with a get, asura lachshaloi, she could never go back to him. B'miyun, but if she was released from an individual through miyun, muteris lachshaloi. Alma, you see very clearly, loyasu miyun de chavrei umavatel gita didei. You see that the miyun of a future husband will not impact the isurim left on her from the get of a prior husband. So we have a stirum uneyubei in our own Mishnah. And that Amar Rabbi Elazar, Tavra Misha Shanazu, Loy Shanazu. Therefore, we have to say it's in fact the Machlokes Tanoim as to whether or not the miyun of a later husband will undo a get of a previous husband. Ula Amar, Ula is another pshat. He says, no, really, the miyun of a previous, the miyun of a later husband, the miyun that she does to a later husband will eliminate a previous get, unless it happened 3 times. Going to shil shabagitin. If she got 3 gittin already, so she married A, gave her a get, B miyun, C get, D miyun, E get. If she did 3 times a get, then the mechse kegedoyla. Then already she got a get 3 times. Then already she looks like a gedoyla, and the Rabbanan will be machmer with her if she's a gedoyla and treat her with all the serve of a gedoyla, which means machzer gushasai would be also. Zokt Rashi. Very popular woman. Once she was already released 3 times using a get, the she can't go back to any one of these husbands. No other mean can be vatal. Before 3 times, therefore, so in the second case of a Mishnah, he must say that it happened 3 times. Okay. Zok to Gemara Baita. So Mantan, we said that there's a machlokes whether or not a future mian will be mevatel an earlier get. So where do you see this machlokes tonight? Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, my dechsiv, it says in the pasuk, meimenu bekesav shosinu. This is a necha. Our water, meaning the Torah, which is the Mishalesh Kamayim, we had to pay money to get clarification in Torah. Imagine if you have to pay a fee to get a psak halacha. Eitzenu or eitzis or what the mechir yavayu only came with a price. What does that mean? B'shas tashakana, we were at a time where we were outlawed from learning Torah. It was a very bad time in Klal Yisrael. Nisbaksha halacha zu. We had a shaila about the following halacha. Harei sheyatza mirishim beget. Umisheni b'miyun mahu. Exactly our case. Ma'u shetachshel rishayim. But they couldn't get. There was no one around to get halachas paskim. So they had to pay to be able to get a psak halacha. How did that come to be? No Rav would charge. But Zachru Adam Echad Ba'arba Meyazuz Vishalu Es Rabbi Kiva B'Beis Asurin. They had to hire somebody to smuggle over to the jail to ask Rabbi Kiva the Shaila. V'Osar, and Rabbi Kiva said it's Osar. It's Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira ben Etzivan, and V'Osar he asked it as well. So we had two poskim who said that the miyun of B will not undo the get of A. Amar Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yosy. It's not true. For sure, this is not the case that was asked to Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Because it's pashut that will be mutter. Why? L'isur kares hitarta. Through miyun, your mater and eshes ish l'suk. Right? So clearly miyun has a very big power. L'isur lav like kol shegein. So you don't think miyun will also be mevatel the isur of machzor rishas and mishanisis? So for sure the miyun will work. And right, in economic, but he's expressing it this way. That's right. Zokamar Baram Kach Shalu. I'll tell you what the Shaila was that was answered that has nothing to do with our question if the miyud of a later husband will be mevatel again. This is what they asked him. Let me just see the hay. Hareisha Haisa, Eishes Achi Imon. Imagine you have a woman who's the wife of the brother of your mother. Your mother's brother, the wife of your mother's brother, you're allowed to marry. Midaraisa, you're allowed to marry the wife of your mother's brother. Your aunt, you're allowed to marry her. It's only us and Midrabam. So this woman who was your aunt, your mother's brother's wife, she went, Vinasa Alchiv Me'avan. She married your brother. Okay? Umes, and now he dies. Now the question is, can you do Yibam on this woman? Because there was a Durabanan, the Isra on her before. But when she was married, she's a Ketana. We're talking about a Ketana here who's subject to Miyun. So you have a woman who's a Ketana, who was your aunt, so she's also Yibam Durabanan. Then she went and married. Then she went, let's say she became a Goreshes from her husband. Then she went and married your brother, and now your brother dies. Could you make a miyun now on her husband, on her first husband after her second husband died, in order that you should now be able to make the mitzvah of Yibum? So the halach is ma'ushati moyin hashta v'sakrinu l'nisuin kamoy. Let her make miyun now to be oiker her marriage from the past, and then you can make Yibum on her because it'll eliminate the Isur D'Rabbanan that's upon her. Yesh miyun la'acher mitzvah b'makom mitzvah. Could you say that you can make miyun after her second husband dies, b'makom mitzvah, so that we can allow him to do yibum, oiloi or not? And this is the question that was asked of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira and of Rabbi Kiva. Sachlu shnei bnei adam b'arba me'asuz ubo b'shalus Rabbi Kiva b'beis asurin the asar as Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira ben Etzivan v'asar. That was the shayla. Amar Yitzchak bar Ashiyan u'moida Rav is moida shemuteres le'echav shel zeh. Everyone's moida that she would be mutter to the brothers for who she became asura. So Rashi is a moida Rav avagav deloy asu miyun dechavrei umevatel gita didei. Even though the miyun of this woman to husband B will not be mevatel the get of husband A, even though she cannot go back and marry her first husband, because we consider it Mashav Rishasai Avalagabe Ochiv, the brothers of this first husband, Nisbatel, she's allowed to marry them, and it will not be considered Eishasach, a huge chiddush. Like to have a Grushas Ochiv. We don't consider it Grushas Ochiv, Lagabe his brother, so he can't marry them because there's an issue of Mashav Rishasai Mishanisas. And it's obviously because it's the Kana, we don't want him to ruin the next marriage, but technically, she's not really married to him. And therefore, we would allow his brothers to marry this woman. That's only heicha the sulai nafik me'acher b'mion. If he gave her a get, now is the end of the story. Yes, then she cannot marry her brothers. But if after he gave her a get, she went and married somebody else, mion, that will in fact eliminate the prior marriage. It will only remain usher to her first husband, but all of the relatives of her first husband could marry her. Like if they'll get to the kama, there's a case where the first get not become buffalo. So Zok the Gemara. Pshita. Of course, it's Pashit. Who knew the Makarish We're only worried about him ruining the marriage. We're not afraid that his brothers will ruin their second marriage. So if you would have thought you guys are his brothers unto him. Kamash Malon. Just like she's usher to him, she's also usher to the brothers. They can't ruin the marriage. Anyway, the same way we answer him, we answer her because we're treating it like the marriage was only eliminated through a get. The whole thing's over.
It shouldn't be a bear because she's not familiar with them. With the
Right, but we're afraid that if we let her marry the brothers, then we'll also let her go back to him.
Okay.
Because of that, we ask for everything. Okay, let's stop here. This was a stickle complicated Gemara, but Baruch Hashem, we got through.